Okay, this shir is Lili Nishmas Reb Shlema Avram ben Michael Hakayin al Vashalom. May it be as chus neshama and aliyas haneshama. We're going to go through some of the halachos of Purim. There are many different mitzvahs that we do on Purim. We're going to go through as much as we can go. Generally, the month of Adar, Chazal tell us that just like Mishanichnas Av Mematim B'Simcha, when the month of comes in, we decrease our Simcha. So to Mishanichnas Adar Marbim B'Simcha, the month of Adar comes in, we increase in Simcha. It's a month that has a healthy mazel, and we can start our simcha even from Shabbos Mevarachim Adar. Certainly now we're a full stage of simcha, and part of that simcha is to add primarily simchas through adding and learning Torah and keeping mitzvahs, which is what we're doing right now. So we should be more informed for the Yom Tov of Purim that's coming up. This year Purim is unique; it's on a Tuesday. The fact that Purim is on a Tuesday means that Shabbos before Purim, the Shabbos which gives the bracha to Purim, is on the 11th of Adar. 11th of Adar is where really, when Purim really starts. We mentioned we start from the beginning of Adar, but the 11th of Adar, the Mishnah says that under certain circumstances, you can start reading the Megillah from the 11th of Adar. You can read it the 11th, the 12th, and the 13th, and of course the 14th and the 15th, which was Purim and Shushan Purim. In this case, our week, Shabbos starts the 11th, we have the 12th and the 13th, before Purim, then we have Purim, the 14th and the 15th, Shushan Purim, and Thursday and Friday are unique days, which is the 16th and 17th of Purim. We'll talk about at the end of the Shir B'li Neder why even the days after Purim, those two specific days have special significance. So it's a full Purim week. The Shabbos before Purim, which we mentioned is the 11th of Adar, is Shabbos Zacher. It's a Shabbos that we take at a second Sefer Torah in Shul. And the purpose of the second sefer is, the first one is for the Parshas HaShavua, but the second for the weekly portion. The second one is to read Parshas Zachar. There's a biblical obligation, min haTorah. Every Jew must hear the reading of Zachar to remember what Amalek did to the Jewish people when they came out of Egypt. Chazal instituted we should read this in a minyan with 10 people from a Sefer Torah and the Shabbos before Purim. So the Torah tells us we have to remember what Amalek did to us. Chazal are the ones that gave us the timing and the way to do it with a Sefer Torah, a minyan of 10 people, 10 Jews, 10 men, and the Shabbos before Purim. And the reason why it's the Shabbos before Purim, because we have the Schira and the Asiyah, the commemoration and the doing. Shabbos before Purim is the Schira, remembering, the commemoration, remembering Amalek. The action happens on Purim, the day when was the downfall of Haman. If somebody hears the reading and doesn't understand what they're saying, he actually does not fulfill his obligation. You need to at least understand the theme, the general theme. And when listening, you should have in mind that you want to fulfill the mitzvah of remembering Amalek. The Baal Kodesh should have in mind that he wants people to be yotzeh, to fulfill their obligation. If you missed out a couple of words of this Kriyas HaTorah of Zachar, as long as you heard the basic theme to remember Amalek and erase Amalek's name, the general thing, that's fine. Do not say along with the Baal Korah. Just listen when he reads the Torah. Listen, be quiet, and just hear the reading. The custom is that if we want to make a minyan for Kriyas HaTorah for Parsha Zachar, although we need to have 10 men, but we don't need to have 10 that didn't hear Parsha Zachar. It's enough to have 6 that didn't hear this reading, as long as you have a total of 10 people in the room, but 6 who never heard yet the Kriyas HaTorah. Women. Many poskim maintain that women also have the obligation of hearing Parsha Zachar. If it's hard for a woman to go to shul, so the custom is to be lenient, and she will read from a chumash. In fact, there's an opinion that says that for a woman it's even more lenient, that she could wait until Purim and hear the reading of the Torah on Purim, which we'll talk about that in a moment. Somebody who can't make it to shul actually does that, men or women. They should read Parshas Zachar from a chumash, open a chumash to Parshas Kiseitze, and read Parshas Zachar there. Some poskim maintain that b'diavad, after the fact, if a person missed out Parshas Zachar, they should hear the reading of the Torah on Purim day before we read the Megillah. We read, it's a different section which talks about Amalek. This is not Parshas Kiseitze, but Parshas V'Shalach, the reading of Vayavi Amalek. And if you read that, you also could fulfill the obligation according to some opinions. And as mentioned, there's a strong argument to say that for women, for sure, it's okay if they hear the reading on that day. So if they couldn't hear a Shabbos Zachar, they can hear when they come to shul on Purim day. People who don't have a minyan where they live, they can't come to a place where there's a minyan. They should make sure to read the reading of Zachar with the trup, with the tune cantillation tunes that we do when we read the Torah. If they have a Sefer Torah, read it from a Sefer Torah, even without a minyan, obviously without a blessing before and after. And they should have in mind they want to fulfill the mitzvah. They should also plan that if they're going to have a minyan on Purim, at least they'll read the reading of the Torah on Purim of Ayav Amalek, which, as mentioned, according to some opinions, that also covers the obligation of reading about Amalek. On this Shabbos, although it's a special Shabbos, but we do say the prayer of Avarachim before Musaf. It's like any other Shabbos, only a Shabbos when we bless the new month, or a Shabbos which we would otherwise not say Tachnif, it would be during the week. Do we miss our Avarachim? But this Shabbos Avarachim is normally said. Someone who wants to practice on this Shabbos to read the Megillah, so should be able to be fluent in reading of the Megillah on Purim. It's not called preparing from Shabbos to the weekday. He's actually doing a mitzvah. It accomplishes its benefit already on Shabbos. He becomes fluent with the Megillah and he's learning Torah. That's perfectly fine. You're allowed to practice on Shabbos the reading of the Megillah. Matzah Shabbos, after Shabbos is over, we daven the traditional Ma'ariv, followed by V'yinoyim Avat HaKadosh. Normally when there's a Yom Tov in the coming week, we don't say the prayers of V'yinoyim Avat HaKadosh. But this is not a regular Yom Tov in the sense that work is forbidden. There are some restrictions on work, which we'll talk about, but it is after all a weekday, and therefore V'yinoyim Avat HaKadosh are recited. Those who didn't say at Kiddush Levana, which could be already said from tonight, if somebody didn't manage to say it, it's already Matzah Shabbos, they should make sure to say it on Matzah Shabbos and not push it off because it's pretty late in the month. When we're preparing for Purim, we should take into account there's something called Miftzah Purim. Miftzah Purim is to make sure that every single person fulfills the mitzvah of Purim properly, talking to people about this and doing something about it also. What we need to do is making sure that we have in every place a person that can read the Megillah. Purim Day, they should also have reading the Torah, as we mentioned earlier, Vayavi Amalek, the section about Amalek before reading the Megillah. People should have portions ready that they could go and fulfill the mitzvah Shleach Manis. Coins to fulfill the mitzvah of giving to the poor, Matanas Lev Yodim. And if we could have in each place a summary hopefully in the local language of the laws of Purim and the story of Purim, that would be great. So we need to work on these days to strengthen our preparation for Purim, that every single Jew, minar vad zaken, young and old, children, women, shall fulfill Purim in the fullest measure, including children, many children, all children, boys and girls. And of course, people that have difficult circumstances, special circumstances, people in the army, in old age homes, orphanages, hospitals, prisons, everybody should be able to fulfill the mitzvah of Purim properly. So that's one of the things that we take into account when we prepare for Purim. A few other pointers about Purim preparation, and then we'll talk about Purim proper. Person has a Megillah and he wants to put the brachas on the Megillah, put their name, or put some people want to put a stamp, they got a sefer to check it, that really shouldn't be written on a Megillah. Megillah is like a sefer Torah. Even on the outside of the parchment, it's not proper to write. It's a parchment that's used for holy things, and you shouldn't use it for things that are really not holy. A lot of people have these fancy Mishloach Manas plans, how they're going to give food presents to different people. And often you want to put it in a fancy dish. And this dish needs to be immersed in a mikveh. Now, normally, there's an issue if you want to give someone a dish and you want to toivel it in advance because you want to be a nice person. Why would I give them a dish now they have to go through the bother of putting it in the mikveh? So I'll toivel it for them. That could be a problem because when you bought it, it's actually not a dish which was made for eating. It's a dish which is made for business. Just like the person in the store, the owner who owns the store where they sell the hardware store cannot sell pre-toiveled dishes. And the reason he can't sell pre-toiveled dishes because it's not a dish which is made for eating. It's not yet obligatory to be immersed. So too, when you buy it, it's still not made for eating. It's made for you to give it as a gift. So that some opinions maintain it's a problem to rely on immersing it, putting in the mikveh before you actually give the gift. But I want to do the right thing. I want to give it to someone as a gift. So what you could do is you can actually make it become the recipient's item. Once it becomes the recipient's, I could tell you, how do I, standing in the hardware store, which has a mikveh located nearby, how do I make it become the recipient's? Simply, you ask someone else to pick it up on behalf of the recipient. So Mr. Goldberg wants to give Shalach Manas, wants to give a present, a dish to Mr. Silverstein. So Mr. Goldberg meets a third person in the store, And it says, can you pick this up on behalf of Mr. Silverstein? Now this belongs to Mr. Silverstein. And now I'll do a favor for Mr. Silverstein and I'll tailor for him. That's perfectly fine. If I'm going to buy dishes for many people, you need to have for each person. This is picked up for Mr. Silverstein, and this is picked up for Mr. Brownstein, and so on and so forth. With glass, which is generally more lenient, the idea of toiveling glass, there's room for leniency. Ideally, you should have someone pick it up for each person, but if you have multiple people you want to give such a gift, and you can't keep track who's which gift am I getting for who, so you can have it that whoever it's going to be for, it's going to be picked up for them. With glass, there's room to be lenient that way. Now, this is all about giving a dish. Shalach manos is a bit more complicated. Here, you're giving a dish with food in it. So now if I'm giving a dish with food in it and I'm buying it, I'm already using it for food. I'm putting a bunch of chocolates in this dish. On the other hand, I'm actually not planning to eat from it. I'm putting all these chocolates in this fancy dish and then giving it as a gift. So best is, if you want to avoid any problems, don't put the food directly on the dish. Put it in a bag, not in a small paper, which is not really considered a separation. In an external item that the food should not touch the dish. And then whoever receives it will table it. If you want to dafka put the chocolates on the dish, there's room for leniency, especially when it comes to glass. If you still want to table it for him, then the only solution is, as we mentioned earlier, have someone else pick it on behalf of the recipient, which is the right thing to do, certainly in a case where you're afraid you're giving to someone who's not religious and you're afraid he won't table it, he won't immerse it, so give it to someone else to pick it up on his behalf. Now it becomes his, and then you could go and immerse it. Alternatively, you could use it first on a temporary basis as a dish. You might not want to use it as a gift afterwards. That might be the only concern. If someone receives a gift and it was previously already toiveled and they didn't go through this process of making it yours, ideally the recipient should toivel it again without a bracha. If you don't know if it was toiveled, find out. If you can't find out, as a recipient, you should toivel it again without a bracha. So it does get a bit complicated. There's leniencies, but I'm trying to discuss the ideal way how to do without getting into any problems. Another pointer about preparation for Purim. People bake a lot of cakes and challahs because they want to distribute it to Mishleach Manas. Now, you bake a dough, which is the measurement in which challah needs to be separated. You're supposed to separate challah. But what if you're distributing it to other people? That creates a problem. Because when you distribute to other people, then you didn't bake such a large dough because it's all going out to a bunch of different people. So it's actually not considered as if you have the full measurement. But if you're distributing it when it's still dough, it has a different halacha. What if you're just making you're making a bunch of small pieces of dough, small challahs? That makes it even more complicated. So the best in such a case is to separate challah without a bracha. Ideally, so in other words, if you have a case where you make each dough is going to go to another person, it's best to separate challah without a bracha. Ideally, to avoid this entire shaila, bake one dough which is a full measurement, which won't be distributed, and that you'll keep at home for your family, and that's a full shir challah, and then you make a bracha on that, and that will cover everything else. Another point about challah is people receive shalach manas from multiple different people. Now, what happens if you have a bunch of different cakes and that combine together, even after it's baked, if they're the same type of a type that they're not different types completely, it's the same thing, and they're in one dish, it automatically combines for challah. So I could put in a bunch of different hamantashen keep them in one dish, and now it actually becomes obligated in challah. Even though I didn't bake them, I had a bunch of people send me shalach manas, I just put them into one box. So the custom is if you put it in a fridge, you put it in a freezer, that doesn't combine for challah. But if you're putting it into a dish, that could really be an issue that it combines for challah. One other pointer in terms of preparation for Purim, standing before Purim, we should think about there are people that actually need Purim needs. They are lacking in so many different ways. There are people around us, there are people that are far away, and in order for them to celebrate Purim properly, Oira, V'simcha, V'sasam Yikar, in an illuminated way, in a happy way, in a joyous way, in a way of Mishta, V'simcha, rejoicing properly without any limits, they need other people's help. So we should work on trying to give, even before Purim, help out all the people around us. Moving on to Purim proper, the day before Purim is called Tainus Esther, is a fast day. The fast starts in the morning. You're allowed to technically eat until the break of dawn. However, if you went to sleep a proper sleep. Proper sleep means, it doesn't mean on your bed, but it means a sleep which is not like a temporary sleep that you half asleep and half awake. If you went for not you went to sleep, you actually fell asleep, and it's a fixed sleep, then once you're sleeping, you can't eat and drink anymore because in your mind, the fast has already started. Unless you stipulated clearly that if you're going to wake up, you should be able to eat or drink. If somebody always goes to sleep at night and has a cup of water next to them every night, and then after they go to sleep, they wake up in the middle of the night and take a drink, you don't have to make any stipulation. Or the same thing if you wake up in the middle of the night to eat. But if otherwise, the person has to make a stipulation because once you actually went to sleep, that creates an early beginning of the fast. Either way, within a half an hour to the break of dawn, you shouldn't eat a fixed meal. You can eat something because it's already the time of davening. It's half an hour before the time of davening. You can eat something light, fruit, vegetables. You can drink non-alcoholic beverages. If you want to eat mezonos up to the size of the volume of an egg of a kabeah, but you shouldn't be eating proper meals. Absent that point, you can, if you made a condition, a stipulation, the customs we stipulate both for eating and for drinking, then you can eat even after you slept. Otherwise, you shouldn't be eating or drinking, even if you're drinking a very small amount, you shouldn't be eating or drinking. If someone forgot and they ate, but it was not yet the beginning of the fast, but it was after they went to sleep, they didn't lose their status of fasting. Although you're supposed to start already fasting then, but if somebody ate before the crack of dawn and they didn't make the stipulation, they could still get an aliyah as someone else who fasts. The reason for the fast of Tainus Esther is a custom. It's a custom that we treat as an obligation. And according to some opinions, it's a serious obligation, but it originates as a custom. And the custom of fasting is because in the time of the story of Purim, the Jewish people fasted on the 13th of Adar before they started the war. Because of that, we also fasting. Some people say no, they fasted. There were 3 fasted. Esther and all the Jews in Shushan fasted in the month of Nisan, but we don't want to fast in Nisan, so we do one fast on Tainus Esther for that. The purpose of the fast is to awaken us to do tshuva. Well, Tainus Esther is not the same type of fast. It's not because something negative happened. It's to commemorate the miracle that happened then. But still, the purpose of every fast is to awaken us to do tshuva. We have to remember the purpose of the fast. As mentioned earlier, fast starts at break of dawn, which is over here a couple minutes after 5. Over here in Crown Heights, fast is over when 3 stars come out, which is about a quarter after 6, 6:16, something like that. Any child who's over bar and bas mitzvah is supposed to fast, but it's not the same obligation like another fast, and therefore there's cases of leniency as we shall mention. But if somebody is healthy and perfectly fine condition, even if it's hard to fast, the fast won't be harmful. Then obviously they're supposed to fast because that's a custom that the community accepts, and you shouldn't separate from the community's ways. If you don't know if you have to fast or not, ask a question, ask a shaila. Who does not have to fast? Women that are expecting, women that are nursing, someone who had a baby within 30 days, someone who's not healthy, does not have to fast, and they eat regular meals. They don't eat with shiurim as we do in Yom Kippur, eating only small amounts and drinking small amounts at a time. They totally not obligated to fasting, and the custom is they don't even make up the fast another day. Some people do make it up another day. Some people redeem the fast with money, but the custom is you don't even have to redeem the fast. They can eat, but they shouldn't eat publicly because it's disrespectful to the people that are fasting today. Unless we're talking about somebody whose life is in danger, there's no restrictions about eating publicly, private. None of those restrictions apply. On other fasts, we say that if somebody is exempt from the fast, they still shouldn't eat delicacies, they shouldn't enjoy meat and wine. We don't find this about Tainus Esther. Nonetheless, it's good to restrict somewhat the eating and drinking to be part of the community. Brushing teeth is a problem on the fast, even if you're not swallowing the water. But if somebody has a difficult time without brushing their teeth, they can be lenient, but they should be careful when they're rinsing their mouth. They should tilt their head in such a way that they shouldn't swallow water accidentally. If someone ate on the fast day, they still have to continue fasting. They don't have to fast another day because this is the day of fasting. Unless they want to atone for the fact that they ate on the day of the fast, they're welcome to take that out as an atonement, but they don't have to fast another day. They should continue the fast on this day. And in davening, when they say Anenu, they could still say Anenu, but instead of saying Anenu, B'yoim Tzoim Tani Senu, answer us on the day of our fast, so that wouldn't be so appropriate. It makes more sense to say B'yoim Tzoim Not tan nisenu, tan zeh. On this day of a fast, not on our fast, because after all, the person didn't fast. If a person drank less than the revius, a very small amount, or ate less than a koisevis, which is, it's hard to give a number for that. It's a date, and they ate it about the size of a matchbox, and they ate it in less than that amount, and that itself with less than the time called kedei achilas prasis. It took a small bite. That's not considered as if they didn't fast. Not that you're allowed to do that, but they're allowed to say anenu in the regular way. There's nothing to be concerned. The custom is that on a fast day we give extra tzedakah. In addition to on Tainus Sessa, we're going to be giving a half a shekel, as we'll soon talk about. But we give extra tzedakah. We think about what we would have eaten on a fast day, and the equivalent of that we saved money by not eating, that should be given to poor people at night. Some people don't end up saving money because they eat whatever they would have eaten on the fast day, plus they eat half to the fast, which just defeats the purpose medically, etc. And the reward of fasting, Chazal tells us, tzedakah. It's not the fast, it's the tzedakah that you're giving to the poor people. This tzedakah should not come from Maisa money, it should come straight out of your pocket. On the fast day, during Shachris, the Chazan says Anenu, but he says Anenu by Chazar when he does the reviewing, the repetition of the Amidah, Chazar Sashatz, he says it between the bracha of Gol Yisrael and Feinu, he says at Shachris, says at Mincha, but the communion does not say Anenu at Shachris, only the Chazan. After Shemona Esrei, we say Slichas as part of davening, as printed in the Siddur. Some people are going to be cooking on the fast day throughout the day for Purim meals, and they would like to taste the Purim food to see if it's missing salt or spices. So there's room to allow it to taste a bit, spit it out, because this is for a mitzvah. If it's not for the purpose of a mitzvah, you shouldn't be tasting and spitting out. I mentioned earlier the idea of machzas hashekel. Machzas hashekel is given before mincha on the fast day to tzedakah for poor people or for the needs of the shul, and the custom is to give 3 coins, commemorating 3 times. It has the word truma in the portion that talks about machzas shekel. This commemorates the fact that every year they used to donate to the Beis Hamikdash in the month of Adar coins, so that in the month of Nisan, when they bring the sacrifices, the karbanas, this will be new coins and not from old coins. We commemorate that. We give this machzas hashekel. We don't have a mind for atonement. That's not what this is about. This is a donation and as a form of tzedakah. What do we give? We take whatever's the local currency. When we find a currency which is called half of a currency. Over here in America, people give $50. Some people prefer to use silver $50. There's an advantage of that. And a lot of people don't have silver $50. So in some shuls, the gabayim that run the shul have the silver $50. So we make a switch. We give them money to buy off the silver $50, and then we give the silver $50 for tzedakah. If you don't have silver $50, you can give anything that's worth $3 $50. Even better would be that you give a full dollars and stipulate in your mind that half will be for the machzah shekel of the dollar, and the other half will be just a gift. Somebody who didn't give machzah shekel on Tainus Esther. So we'll soon talk about after Tainus Esther what to do, but I want to talk about before Tainus Esther. Some places had a custom that they started giving machzah shekel on the 1st of Adar. In some places on the 11th of Adar, which is what people do when they fast, and when the fast is pushed back, when depending on the setup of the calendar, Tainus Esther could be on the 11th of Adar, when Purim is on a Sunday. Some people say to give before Parsha Zachar. Why am I mentioning all of that? If somebody, for whatever reason, can give the machzah shekel on Tainus Esther, they could start earlier using one of those dates. But really, it should be done on Tainus Esther. Who's supposed to give? Either people from 20, according to one opinion, according to another opinion, those that are the age of 13 and up. The Rebbe mentioned that there's a Jewish custom that we separate machzas shekel, give for ourselves and for our family. Family means for the women and children. Some people even do for fetuses. And the Rebbe said that's the custom in all Jewish homes. Those who follow this custom, it's a common custom, need to continue. Once they start this custom, they continue this custom every year until their children reach the age when they become obligatory on their own. Now they're on their own, they're bar mitzvah or 20, depending on the opinion, let them give on their own. But otherwise, the parents have to continue. Unless the parents stipulated the very first time they're doing this should be beli neder, not with the force of a vow, is a one-off thing they want to do, with pleasure. But once you start and he didn't make that stipulation, you're supposed to continue every single year. The Rebbe once mentioned in the year Tavshin Beis that it's a good idea to train children. They themselves should give Master Shekel from their own money. So we give them money in order that they should give Master Shekel, which is different than what it says in Halacha. In Halacha, we talk about giving on behalf of our children. And then there's another idea, having the children be trained that they should give it on their own. If a person missed out and didn't give it before Mincha, the next chance, some people give it by night, but ideally the next chance should be Purim day before reading of the Megillah, or even after reading the Megillah if a person forgot to give before the Megillah reading. And if a person didn't give it on Purim, there's still room to say that he should make it up after Purim, ideally before the month of Nisan, and maybe even before the next year, the month of Nisan. Meiser money should not be used for Machzas HaShekel, even if a person is giving for the wife, who has a custom to give for the wife and kids. But if a person gave the amount that he's supposed to give and he wants to add to this, that's a whole different story. You can add for Meiser money. So the Machzas HaShekel is before Mincha, then comes Mincha. Mincha is supposed to be davened early, before sunset. Sunset is about 5:45, and generally you're supposed to daven mincha before sunset. It's always an issue of people davening after sunset. On a fast day, it's even more complicated. There's Kriyas HaTorah, there's Haftorah, which is problematic to do when it's already after sunset. There's Birchas Kohanim, which is said Al Kenu L'Kavisenu in Chazar Sashatz. So we should have mincha early. In this mincha, as mentioned, we have Kriyas HaTorah, we have a special Haftorah, and in mincha, everybody says the prayer of Anenu, unless somebody is not fasting because they're not well, so they say B'yoyim Tzom Tan Hazeh, somebody forgot and they ate, as mentioned earlier. Even a child who's not fasting could say the Anenu, but instead of B'yoyim Tzom Tan Yisenu, Tzom Tan Hazeh. So the community says Anenu in the bracha of Shema Keilenu, and the Chazan says it as mentioned between Gal Yisrael and Rifa'inu. And he also adds Birchas Kohanim L'Keinu L'Kavasenu before Sim Shalom. There's no Tachnun said at Mincha. No Avinu Malkeinu. After all, it is Erev Purim in the afternoon. No Tachnun, no Avinu Malkeinu. The Rebbe introduced a custom, which the Rebbe said was customary in many Jewish communities and was forgotten, that people should speak words of motivation to inspire people to do tshuva, and we should try to do this after Mincha, say a few words, or even a kapitel Tilim. If you can't do that, at least think about the idea of inspiring and thinking about these holy words to inspire people for tshuva. While the fast is over 6:16, I believe, you're still not allowed to eat before Megillah reading, as we shall mention momentarily. And people who are davening Ma'ariv when the fast is over, it'd be worthwhile to say again Shema, because often for the mitzvah of Shema, which is a mitzvah minator, to say it at the proper time, it's ideal. The fast is over at one stage, which was called 3 medium stars. For Shema, we want to be stringent for the 3 small stars, and it's better after Ma'ariv is over. It's better to say again Shema, or in this case after the Megillah reading. Before Megillah reading, there's a number of restrictions. One is not allowed to do work. One is not allowed to sleep, even if they plan to sleep only a tiny bit. And this is from a half an hour before nightfall until after Megillah reading. One is not allowed to eat, even if it's hard, because they're fasting. And the lashon of the price going to fill out tiniest kashal, and the fast is difficult. That's eating. Eating is not the same as tasting. Tasting means fruits, vegetables, other non-mezainis or hamaitzi foods. Drinking non-alcoholic beverages is not considered eating. Or even if a person eats mezainis or hamaitzi, but only up to the size of an olive, that's still considered tasting, not eating. Tasting, in a case of a great need where it's hard for a person to fast and they want to strengthen themselves in the weakness of the fast before the Megillah reading, there's room to be lenient with that. If somebody is weak, and to wait until after Megillah will be harmful for him. Tasting is not enough. They need to eat. They're also allowed to eat, but they have to ask someone else to remind them that they should not forget, through being engaged in eating, to hear the Megillah. If a woman is fasting, her husband is in shul, she's waiting for her husband to come up from shul, she can be lenient as well with tasting. As mentioned earlier, so there's so many foods out there that are substitute foods that are not mezainis or hamaitzi, that's all considered tasting. One also should not learn before Megillah reading, because we don't want to get involved in something else which will make us forget the mitzvah. And then starts the day of Purim, which is one of the holiest days in the year, which the Sfarim tells that no Shabbos and no Yom Tov matches up with a special advantage, that the great revelation of Purim. We wish each other when they see them on Purim, a guten Purim, a freilichen Purim, a good Purim, a happy Purim, even sometimes good Yom Tov. Many people wear Shabbos clothing on Purim. In Sefer HaManhagim it says that was a custom of our Rabbeim to wear silk like Shabbos and Yom Tov, and it's not necessarily a directive for the public, but the common custom is a lot of people wear Shabbos clothing, and in some places it says to start already at night or even before Mincha to start wearing Shabbos clothing. Some people dress up. There's a custom to dress up. The Rebbe mentioned this custom, and he said it's primarily done through children. In recent years, I've seen more adults worried about dressing up than children, but the Rebbe said it's primarily done through children. And there is an issue about what you use for the costume. The costume shouldn't have any concerns of shatness. There are poskim that found leniencies with what we call shatnez derabanan, where it's only a rabbinic level of shatnez. There were even poskim that were considering allowing man wearing woman clothing for the Simcha of Purim, but many poskim write against this. Certainly, if we're talking about before and after Purim, plays that are before Purim, the poskim say that the het that was given, which is challenged by a lot of poskim, is on Purim and not after Purim or not before Purim. That, of course, wouldn't make any sense. When dressing up, make sure you don't, when you're davening, don't wear something which doesn't look appropriate to stand like that in front of a king. Some people paint their hands. If there's no substance to the paint, just color, in other words, you don't feel anything, then you can wash your hands like that for Hamaitzi. It's not a chatzitz, it's not a barrier for Hamaitzi. So we are talking about the night of Purim. We're davening in Ma'ariv. We start Ma'ariv as soon as possible. We don't want to push off the mitzvah of Megillah. In our Ma'ariv Shemini Esrei, we add the Ala Nisim and throughout all our tefillas of Purim. We don't make an announcement before Shemini Esrei. People should say Ala Nisim because it's considered an interruption of davening. But we give a bang in the shul. People should remember to say Ala Nisim. And after Shemini Esrei comes Kaddish to Skabla reading the Megillah. If somebody forgot Ala Nisim, they don't have to daven again. Megillah can be read all night until the break of dawn, although some people say it's better to do it before midnight, but you're allowed to technically read it all night. There's something called Zrizim Magdim L'Mitzvahs. It's always not a good idea to push off a mitzvah. The earlier you do a mitzvah, it's better. It's the right thing to do. If someone can't wait until it's night, so it's not so simple you allowed to read after sunset. You really have to wait till it's nightfall. But if somebody's unwell, if somebody's elderly, in desperate situations, we can be lenient. If somebody's really stuck, what we call a makam oinus, where the person has no choice, then it might even be room to rely on the opinion they could read even before sunset for the time called Plaga Mincha, which over here would be approximately, I have written down 4:38, if you can read afterwards. But if somebody read then and later have an opportunity to read again when it's the real time, they should read again the Megillah, just not make a bracha. So it's that serious. If there's an old hedron and they're not letting you come later, okay, so you'll read it earlier. The custom is that even by night we celebrate Purim and we have somewhat of a meal. It's important to have a set table with candles. Although some have a custom not to eat meat to indicate that the real mitzvah, the Suda, we don't fulfill the obligation of Suda's Purim only by day. So therefore, to show that distinction, some have the custom not to eat meat at night. And again, those who did not do Kiddush Levana yet, that's the last night for Kiddush Levana, at least on the Lechatchil level, so they should do Kiddush Levana the whole night of Purim as a possibility to do Kiddush Levana. When people go to sleep the night of Purim, they don't say in Shema the sections of Shema before retiring, the sections of Tachnan, but they do say Rebbeinu Shalom Hareini Moichel Amnatzeich B'Vay. Only on Shabbos v'Yom Tov do we skip those sections. Comes the day of Purim. The day of Purim has multiple mitzvahs that we have to do, but before we get to that, the mitzvahs of the day of the Purim are supposed to be done from sunrise, which is about 6:25, 6:26, till sunset, which is about 5:49, 5:50, something like that, 10 to 6. That's the time frame in which you can do the mitzvahs of Purim. Of course, don't forget to say the Shema in the morning in the right time. For men, the Shema should be said by 9:15. Poskim mentioned that on Purim we wake up early to go to shul, earlier than any other day. It's one of the days that is one of the hashkam, it's the days that we wake up early. Before Megillah reading, we're not supposed to eat by day as well. On the contrary, the reading of the day is even more serious than the reading of the night. Drinking, there's room to be lenient to drink, of course, if it's not an alcoholic beverage. And if somebody is really stuck, they can even taste, as we mentioned, tasting means fruits and vegetables, or even mezainis up to the size of an egg. But otherwise, we don't eat before Megillah reading. Some are very particular, they don't have a proper meal before doing all the mitzvahs of the day. The custom is to be lenient, that they can eat your meal before Mishloach Manos Matanos Levyonim. But if you want to do it before the meal, that's great. So like this, you'll remember to do all the mitzvahs. In davening, Purim, we don't say Tachnun. And although the mitzvahs are normally done after davening, Matanas Levyonim, we give tzedakah to the poor after davening, that's the time. But if you see poor people, of course you're not going to hold back from giving them. Anytime a person asks you for money, you shouldn't, unless the person is asking you every 5 minutes or every day. But there's a concept called Al Yosef Dach Nichum, don't respond empty-handed to a poor person. And certainly on Purim, when we give to everyone, B'chlal it's a mitzvah to give tzedakah before davening. So even if it's before davening, you give tzedakah to people. After we do our Shemoneh Esrei with our Al Hanisim and half a Kaddish, we read the Torah, the section of Ayov Amalek, and as was mentioned earlier, if somebody didn't hear Parsha Zachar, now is the time to make up for that. We should hear this Parsha. And even if you did hear Parsha Zachar, this is a very important part of reading the Torah and commemorates this greatness of racing Amalek. So this is more important than any other reading of the Parsha. If a person can come to a minyan and he's reading the Megillah at home, he should read the section of Ayov Amalek from a Chumash with a tzrap if he can. After reading of the Torah, before they even put back the Sefer Torah, they read the Megillah. It's worthwhile to be particular and not to open your Megillah before they put away the Torah completely and roll it up as a respect to the Torah. And we don't take off our tefillah until Megillah has been finished reading. Those who didn't give yet their machzah shekel, now before Megillah reading is the time to make up and give the machzah shekel. When we make a bracha on the Megillah, the bracha of Shechiyanu, which is said by night and by day, but during the day, Shechiyanu, we have in mind, Shechiyanu, we have an opportunity to do the mitzvah of Megillah, but we also have in mind in the Shechiyanu all the other mitzvahs of the day, B'shloach manes, presents of food, Matanas Evanim, gifts to the poor, and Sudas Purim, the meal of Purim. And after the Megillah, we proceed with davening, Shoshanis Yaakov, Ashrei, etc., and we put back the Sefer Torah. It's a busy day. Make sure you don't forget what has to happen that day. Amongst the different things, don't forget to daven mincha. It's important to daven mincha. Don't forget the daily shiurim, chumash, tilim, tanya, rambam, etc. Usually people set up their mincha to be done before Sudas Purim. Some people daven mincha gedola, the earliest mincha possible, in order not to make any get stuck and forget to daven mincha. If somebody is very, very busy on Purim and he has no time, he's doing miftzayim, if he doesn't have time to eat a proper meal, he can eat a meal in the morning, and he can still fulfill the mitzvah and eat a small meal in the morning of breakfast. Work is not done on Purim. If somebody does work on Purim, they will not see a blessing, it says in halacha, forever from the work they do. Working, this doesn't include the night of Purim. Most poskim say the night of Purim work is permitted, and if somebody is lenient, they won't lose out the bracha. Somebody is stringent, they get a bracha for being stringent. Work through a goy is permissible unless we're talking about a public work like building a house, and in that itself, there's room for leniency under certain circumstances. Light work is not considered work that doesn't take any time and involvement, but whatever you do, make sure it doesn't keep you busy, that you'll forget about the simcha of the day. And the work that's done for the purpose of Purim, a work of simcha, work of a mitzvah is okay, even selling and buying is okay, but don't get too involved, that'll take away from the simcha of Purim. Some people are strict and they don't open their stores unless they need money to be able to bring home to eat a Purim meal. Washing laundry in the machines that we have today is not a problem on Purim. It doesn't take time, doesn't take that much involvement, as long as it doesn't take you away from the simcha of Purim. Taking haircuts graces your Purim better. You can be lenient cutting your nails and all of that. I want to go through the various mitzvahs of the day, each one by one, and explain the halachos associated with that. We spoke about hearing the Megillah. The mitzvah of hearing the Megillah is twice, once by night, once by day. The day mitzvah is until sunset. If a person is stuck right before sunset and the Megillah reading will go past sunset, then he should read it without a bracha. Children should also be trained to hear the Megillah. The custom is, it's a good custom, it's brought in halacha to bring young boys and young girls, little kids to shul to hear the Megillah. We bring even very little ones as long as they don't disturb. Parents should make sure that the kids listen and don't disturb the reading of the Megillah. Mitzvah amufcha, the preferred mitzvah, is to hear the Megillah in shul, where there's a lot of people. At least it should be a minyan. Although you could, strictly speaking, according to halacha, be yoytze the mitzvah even less than a minyan. But we should try to go have a minyan, and even more b'roivam in a big place where there's a large shul. If somebody has a set shul that he always goes to, he doesn't have to go to a bigger shul because of the mitzvah of b'roivam having a large crowd. When reading the Megillah, we take the Megillah and we fold it in 3 sections. Each yeriya, each parchment. So it's folded one on top of each other, 3 sections. Our custom is those who hear the Megillah reading do the same. Before reading the Megillah, there's 3 brachas, al mikra Megillah, shas nisim, shechiyanu. And if somebody forgot the shechiyanu, after reading the Megillah, there's no shechiyanu made anymore. It's appropriate to stand when these brachas are being said. While the Megillah is being read, although some people have accustomed to stand, and the Rebbe did that too, but there's no obligation to stand when the Megillah is being read. The person who's reading is having a mind to fulfill everybody's obligation. If somebody wants to make his own brachas, but he's reading the Megillah himself from a kosher Megillah, along with the Baal Korah, then he can make his own brachas too. Listen to the brachas. Don't say Baruch Hu Baruch Shemai. You're fulfilling your obligation with those brachas. Only say Amen. If you came late and you missed the brachas, they started the brachas already, say it fast, quickly, that you'll finish them before they start reading the Megillah. If you didn't manage and you came and they just started reading the Megillah and you missed the brachas, so if there's a pause somewhere in the middle when the people say the pasuk of Ish Yehudi out loud, you could chaparayim and say the brachas then. If you're middle of Shemoneh, you should not stop your Amidah to listen to hear the Megillah. I spoke about people coming late. What happens if a person comes to shul and he realizes he didn't say Birchas HaTorah? He should not hear Megillah before saying a bracha on the Torah. If a person is under a lot of pressure, he won't be able to hear the Megillah later. So say only the bracha Asher Bachar Ban, which is the most important of all the brachas, and you'll say all the other Birchas HaTorah later. If for whatever reason the person said the tefillah of Avas Olam before Krishma, which is somewhat of a substitute for Birchas HaTorah, he forgot Birchas HaTorah, that certainly would suffice. But if a person is stuck, I came, they already finished the brachas, I need to say Birchas HaTorah and say the brachas, and I got to rush to all of that. So what he might want to do is start reading from his chumash that he has in front of him, because he's allowed to read, as long as he's not reading most of the Megillah or a full section, you're allowed to even read it from a chumash. It's not ideal, however. It's best, of course, to hear it later, even if you're going to miss out hearing it from a minyan, than hearing it in the manner that you're not going to have Birchas HaTorah. You're not allowed, the Rebbe spoke about this also in a Sikha, you're not allowed to read the Megillah without Birchas HaTorah. If somebody is stuck and it's right before sunset, then Megillah does not push the side of mitzvah Birchas HaTorah, which is a mitzvah in the Torah. Somebody who's heard the Megillah already, now he's reading the Megillah for other people. So only the people that are listening to the Megillah should make the bracha. One of them will make the bracha for everyone and have a mind for everybody else. Or one man for other, one woman can make for other women too. If the people listening do not know how to make a bracha, then the person reading will make a bracha. Unless he's reading for people that he's worried they're not going to listen to the whole Megillah, then he shouldn't make a bracha. He shouldn't ask them to make a bracha. Ladies who make a bracha say Lishmoya Megillah instead of Al Mikra Megillah, and some have the custom to say Al Mikra Megillah, whatever your custom is. If you're reading for other people and you need to stop in the middle and there's an important need, and you already were yoitz in the Megillah, you're allowed to stop. And you're allowed to sit while you're reading the Megillah. A lady is not supposed to read the Megillah. Certainly not to be moitzi other people. She's supposed to hear from a man. In desperate situations, she doesn't have who should read the Megillah for her, and she knows how to read the Megillah, and she has a kosher Megillah, then she reads it herself. But if she later has a man that can read it for her, she should hear it later from a man. You cannot hear the Megillah through a phone, through a radio, through a microphone. And people that have hearing aids should take them off before reading the Megillah. They could either stand very close to the Baal Korah, join a special minyan for hearing impaired people, have a private minyan at home, a private reading at home. If you cannot hear yourself without hearing aids, then you'll read without a bracha. If a person can't hear anything and the only way he can listen is through a hearing aid, then put on the hearing aid. But in such a case, such a person will not make a bracha. The same thing applies to kosherly implants. Megillah by day is more severe than Megillah at night, and a bar mitzvah bacher who doesn't have yet a full beard should be strict and not read the Megillah for other people. By night, unless it's for women, which is room for leniency, by night it's not a problem. If we're stuck in Miftzayim, there's no one else that can read, so we get even bar mitzvah boys to read the Megillah, even for men. There's a bunch of halachas about mistakes in the Megillah, and in the Purim guide that we published, we actually published a Megillah with common mistakes that people make, and some words could be significant meaning in a significant difference in the meaning, and that creates a problem, and a person might have to read the Megillah all over again if they missed out certain words or they read it incorrectly. So we should get a Balkoid who knows how to read properly and he knows the Trop properly also. You're not supposed to talk from the first brach of Megillah reading till the very, very end. If the Balkoid spoke, that won't be a problem. But if the person who was listening, then he can't hear at that time. And if you didn't hear the Megillah, the person doesn't fulfill his obligation. If you have a kosher Megillah and you know how to read it properly, you could read along with the person reading with the Balkoid in a way that it's audible to you, but not audible to other people who won't disturb other people. If you don't have a kosher Megillah, don't read along. People will pay attention to you, or you will pay attention to yourself. You won't be able to hear the Balkoid properly also, and you won't be Yitzah because you're focusing on your reading and not on the Balkoid's reading. If a person read some of the Megillah from a Chumash, a small amount, he is Yitzah. Therefore, if somebody's following from a printed Megillah from a Chumash, you don't read along, but if you missed out a couple of words less than half of the Megillah, you could catch up quickly from a Chumash in a way that you actually have to say those words in a way that you can actually hear it and catch up to where the Balkoid is up to. Don't catch up while he's continuing to read because then you're not reading in order. So you have to catch up to the place where he's up to. You need to hear every single word in order. If you missed out one word, you're not Yotza. If you missed out a letter, or the letter was swallowed, that could also sometimes be a problem. When the 4 psukim are said out loud, we should say it fast so that we should afterwards be able to hear the Balkoid. There's the banging of Haman, and the Balkoid should really wait until people stop making noise. If he doesn't wait, then read it to yourself in a way that you can hear it, the word Haman again, because you couldn't hear the word or the word afterwards, from a kosher Megillah, or at least from a Chumash. It's important not to use these dangerous stuff, fire poppers or whatever it is, in shuls. They're dangerous for people's ears, eyes, and other dangers. Poskim already bring this meaning in many communities. They made a rule against these things. They used to announce in shuls and Parshas Zachar this shouldn't be done, even if it's not dangerous. It's harmful, and they made rules that people shouldn't even sell these things. If people are wearing earplugs, they have to because it bothers them the noise. They have to make sure they actually hear the Megillah properly. The bracha after the Megillah is only said when you have a minyan. It is not said when there's a person, a private Megillah reading when there's no minyan there. If somebody is there's room for leniency to include women and children in this minyan, but that's if they're present, not if they walked out in middle. They have to be the for the reading. The Rabbeim had a minyan that they would make a bracha even when there was no minyan, but the strict halach is you to have a minyan. We make a bracha on the Megillah, after the Megillah, and then we roll up the Megillah. The Rebbe would sometimes start rolling before and continue before the bracha and continue afterwards. If you don't know if you missed a word or not, so if it's not a real concern, yeah, you have a far-fetched doubt, you can assume that you heard the word. If there's a genuine doubt, if it's by day, you need to hear again the Megillah. Unless it's a word that doesn't affect change the meaning. By night, you could certainly be lenient, and with women, there's even place to be lenient even by day. If you don't know if you made a mistake, if the Balkoid made a mistake, same rules apply. Someone who will not hear the Megillah does not make a bracha shas and nisim and shechiyanu on the day. If a person wants to, they could get a new garment and make a shechiyanu on a new fruit, a new garment, and also for the Yom Tov, but otherwise we don't make a bracha on the Yom Tov. There's another mitzvah called matanas le'evyonim. Matanas le'evyonim, every individual, men and women, children once to the age of chinuch, or if we're in doubt if they reach the age of chinuch, even poor people have to give on Purim, not the night before Purim, not the night after Purim, on Purim day to 2 poor people, money or something that's worth money. And it has to be at least the value of a pruta. Now that silver recently just went up, a nickel is no longer counted from matanas le'evyonim. It needs to be at least 7 cents, for what I just checked just today. That's the minimal amount. Of course, you should give as much as possible, give as more, and give to more poor people. If you can't find a poor person, you can give it to someone on behalf of the poor people. And it's important to a gabbai tzedakah you can give it to, or if you don't have a gabbai tzedakah, to another person, and ideally the poor person should know there's money for him. If you can't even do that, put into tzedakah pushka, but that it should go for poor people eventually. And some people, because that's problematic, some people give matanas le'evyonim before Purim, so it should get to poor people on Purim, which is, so at least you cover your bases always. Anybody doesn't have enough food to sustain himself and his family is considered poor. Married women, children that are eating at home, should not rely on the parents, on the father and the husband giving matanas le'evyonim. They should give their own. We're not particular about Purim money. We give whoever asks. So there is the mitzvah matanas levianim, that it has to be poor people and Jewish people. But otherwise, we give in abundance. We give to anyone. The custom is on Purim we give money to the religious employees, to the Rabbanim, to the Chazanim, to the Malamdim, to the Moistis. These people are looking forward. Now, this is not Matanas Levianim, they're not poor people, but there is such a custom as well. The Rambam writes that it's better to do much more Matanas Levianim than to increase in Yemil and Shalach Manas. The greatest simcha is to bring happiness to the poor people, to the orphans, to the widows, and that person does that is compared to the Shekhinah. That means you don't give, I know this is exactly worth the proof. We give extra. People spend so much money on Shalach Manas, fancy foods for the meal, and then let's look at how much was spent on Matanas Levianim. Matanas Levianim should be much more than all of that. You cannot use Maisa money for Matanas Levianim unless you want to add to the basic obligation. And if it's after Shkia, after sunset, and a person forgot he didn't do Matanas Levianim and didn't do Shalach Manas, then do it before nightfall. The mitzvah of Shalach Manas also is men, women, and children once they're the age of Chinuch, or we don't know if they reached the age of Chinuch on Purim day, not the night before Purim, not the night after Purim, to give at least to one friend Shalach Manas, man to man, or woman to woman, to adults. It's not, adults should be given to adults, not to children. At least to one person, two types of food which are ready to eat right away, an apple and a candy, cake, and seltzer, juice. It doesn't have to be different brachas, as long as they're two different types of foods. A salad is considered one food. Even if it's a salad with croutons, bread and a dip, it possibly is considered one food. So we should look for something that's really considered two different foods. And this purpose of this is to increase friendship. The more you give to people is praised, especially for people that don't have things. You should give them something that they would eat from a kashrus point of view, something that's healthy, that's healthy for them, that they're allowed to have it from their health perspective. That Rabbein would give to 3 people, and this idea of giving extra Shalach Manas. It doesn't mean you should exaggerate in Shalach Manas. As mentioned earlier, it's more important to increase Matanas Levianim given to the poor people in Shalach Manas. The main idea is not to show off that you're wealthy, not because that's the right thing, because everybody does it. It's to increase friendship or to help people that don't have people that really need this. Some people have a custom dafka to give sweet food. There's various different customs that people have about Shalach Manas. There's a custom people don't thank for Shalach Manas. There's a custom to give back Shalach Manas if someone gave you, but it's questionable if you fulfill the obligation if you're giving back to someone because you have to give back to them because you're just responding to what they did. It's important that the person that receives Shalach Manas knows from who they got the Shalach Manas. Married woman, same story. Children should not rely on the husband or on the father. They should give their own Shalach Manas on their own. Giving a Shalach Manas in partnership is a beautiful idea, but it needs to make sure every person has to do their own mitzvah of Shalach Manas. The custom is to use a shliach, a messenger, to pass the Shalach Manas. That's a custom. It's not an obligatory. And some people have a custom that they give a gift to the person, the messenger that gave the Shalach Manas. So when I get Shalach Manas, a guy gave me the Shalach Manas, I give him a gift. So that adds in the friendship and increases friendship. The messenger could be a child, doesn't have to be an adult. If you send a message, ask someone before Purim that on Purim he should send Shalach Manas for you, and you order from a store or over the internet, that's fine. You can do that as well. You cannot use Meister money for Shalach Manas, not only for the basic requirement, for the extras as well. Each one of the Shalach Manas should be chashiv. At least there should be a kazayis in each Shalach Manas. You should make sure not to give non-mavushal wine to someone who's not religious. Someone who you don't know if he's going to make a bracha, you can let him give a Shalach Manas, but don't give him something that he has to bench on, hamaitzi. Don't give him milchiks, don't give him fleishiks, and ideally you should write the appropriate brachas. Someone who's mourning in the year of mourning or within shloshim for other relatives has to give Shalach Manas, but not fancy things, and not to many people. If they always give to 2-3 people, 2-3 people is fine. If Shalach Manas should not be sent to someone who's mourning, you could send to their family members. If somebody sends Shalach Manas, you're allowed to receive the Shalach Manas, and you're allowed to give back Shalach Manas as per custom. The same way if somebody greets a mourner, he's allowed to respond, Aleichem Shalom. The same thing if somebody gives the Shalach Manas, he's allowed to give back. If someone lent you money, that's a question of interest. You shouldn't really give them Shalach Manas unless you always do it all the time, and you're not doing it because he lent you money and not while you're paying him back. Poor people also have to give Shalach Manas. If they don't have Shalach Manas, they have whatever they're going to eat, and they switch with someone else. If the person is not home when you're giving him the shalach manas and he's come back after Purim, it could very well be he didn't fulfill the obligation, he never got it. We don't have to check that the shalach manas made it to the right place or the matanas legionim. We assume he sent someone and made it there. And finally, there's the final mitzvah of Purim, the mitzvah of eating the sudas Purim. Purim is a day of happiness, rejoicing. We don't eulogize, we don't fast. We celebrate and thank Hashem for all the nisim. It's greater than the simcha of Yom Tov. We need to eat at least one meal on Purim. Families get together and they eat together. If there's a communal sudas Purim, it has to have all the rules of tznius. But otherwise, people eat at home with their families. They get together with friends. If somebody is mourning, he's in the year of mourning, and he normally eats sudas Purim by other people, he's allowed to this year join other people. And even if he normally eats at home sudas Purim, but if they invite him and they'll be upset if he doesn't come, he's alone. It costs too much money for him. There's room to be lenient and go and eat out sudas Purim, even if he normally doesn't do that. But a mourner should not dance, even by the meal, unless he dances always at home in his own home, and now he's dancing again, and it doesn't look like he's mourning publicly. Then there's okay. He can dance at home if it looks like it's a public mourning. If he's not dancing, he should dance. We mentioned earlier that mincha is davened early with alanism, and only later we do the meal. The meal starts after midday, towards the end of the day, because we're so busy with all the mitzvahs and the customs. We continue the meal into the night. Although you could do the meal in the morning. Most of the meal should be done by day. Most of the meal either time-wise or an amount of food. At least we should eat a kabeya the size of an egg, or at least the size of a kazayas, a half an egg, the volume of half egg before Shkia. If a person did not eat a kazayas, they didn't before Shkia, they really did not fulfill the obligation, and they don't say alanism. We should rejoice, make sure we have a full, proper meal with nothing missing, and have candles in a way of simcha. We should wash, we should have meat, fish, is all ideal stuff, and even a woman who has to go to the mikveh the night after Purim is allowed to eat meat as long as she cleans her mouth and her teeth well. Krepla, the custom is to eat kreplach on Purim, and one of the foods we eat on Purim is hamatashen, which is usually mezainis. And even if the dough is hamaitzi dough, if the filling is the primary ingredient and it's primarily made for as a delicacy, the bracha is mezainis. People normally send foods to other people Purim during the meal. Normally, if you get new food in the meal that you weren't planning, there might be a question of making a bracha on it. But Purim, it's a normal thing if it's included in the hamaitzi. Before we start the meal, we start learning Torah before we start the meal. Moshe Rabbeinu made a rule that people every Yom Tov should talk about that Ness, and Purim also we're supposed to talk about the Ness of Purim and learn halachas. Actually, Purim is 30 days before Pesach when we start learning the halachas of Pesach and we start thinking about giving mois chitim people who need to have money for Pesach, distributing matzah shmur, etc. Our custom is 30 days before Pesach, we don't eat matzah, and that starts already on Purim. And there's a bunch of halachas which start 30 days before Pesach. There's an obligation for men, not for women. Women are not supposed to drink wine in front of men, and Bechlal, they shouldn't be drinking a lot of wine. But for men, there's an obligation to drink on Purim, and it says, until you don't know the difference between cursed is Hama, blessed is Martche. According to some opinions, that means at least drink more than normal. Whether you drink a lot or a little, as long as your intentions are for the Eibishter, that's the correct thing to do, but you have to be careful. You wash, you make a mitzvah, you bench, you should make a proper simcha shal mitzvah. If somebody is weak, if somebody knows wine will harm him, if somebody knows if he drinks, he'll affect how he treats a mitzvah, bracha or davening, he'll become lightheaded and won't behave properly, he should not drink. There's a question if drinking should be wine or other alcoholic beverage. Sometimes the Rebbe spoke about the uniqueness of dafki using wine. If you drink wine in a meal, you make a bracha on it, ber pri agafen. You don't make a bracha after because it's included in benching, but it's a chashuv of food wine. So on Shabbos we had kiddush, therefore we don't make a ber pri agafen, but on Purim we don't have kiddush, and you drink wine, you should make a bracha on it. Vodka, whiskey, which is a normal thing that people drink in a meal, we don't make a bracha on it. I want to mention something about wine in general. There's an opinion that says that a wine, the shear for bracha achrayna is less than other drinks, even a kazayis, and therefore one should be careful not to go in this to drink. If you drink very, very little wine, it's fine, or you drink a full revius. Anywhere in between is a question of a bracha achrayna. It's not relevant if it's the middle of a meal, but outside of a meal, this could be relevant. I often see by chuppahs, everybody wants to taste from the wine, leftover wine of the cup, and people go into a shaila of bracha achrayna. If a person's father told him not to drink, he's mechuyev to listen to his parents, kibbud aveim. The Rebbe spoke that it's obvious that the simcha of Purim does not negate any mitzvah in the Torah. No positive commandments or negative commandments. Certainly doesn't allow people to speak lashon hara, negative things about people, lifting up their hands. the Rebbe spoke about is how it can be harmful when people drink on Purim. The Rebbe spoke about the Gzeira of Mashka, that the rule that the Rebbe made against drinking Mashka and the limitations applies on Purim also. People should be careful about this. Those before 40 and even those after 40 could minimize on their Mashka. Mashpim should talk about this. And the Rebbe spoke about not only should be careful about yourself and make sure other people too. Alcohol can sometimes cause poisoning. It could be dangerous for people that are driving. Parents should be aware of the various dangers of alcohol. Purim by night, the night after Purim, we make a fabrengen, and whether during the meal or after the meal, the Rebbe would often make a fabrengen after the Sudas Purim. If you start the meal by day, you continue into the night, as long as you ate a kazayas in the beginning of the meal before sunset, then you say al anisim in benching, as long as you didn't in between Dav Ma'ariv or say Shema. If you didn't eat a kazayas, then you can't say al anisim. We already mentioned earlier, really you should eat most of the meal, including the meat. You should eat by day. At least you should eat a kabei or at least a kazayas when it's still daytime. Poskim say that the right thing is to do is to bench, say al anisim, and then go to Shalom Dav Ma'ariv, and then you can celebrate as long as you want. If a person goes too far in their meal until midnight, they'll forget to say Shema, they'll forget to daven. The purpose of Purim is not to mess things up. The Ramah would go around, the Rebbe spoke about this many times, he would get dressed up, and the night of Purim and tell people, remind him to daven Ma'ariv. There's a mitzvah of Ma'ariv, there's a time for Ma'ariv, and if people miss the time, Chazal made a rule, you're not supposed to do it after midnight. If you missed after midnight, you can read it afterwards, but afterwards, if it's much afterwards, it can be a problem. Some people miss out Ma'ariv, miss out Shema, miss out Shemanesni. There's halachos about that, which I'm not going to go through right now. Shushan Purim is a day of celebration. We're supposed to use that Shushan Purim, whatever we missed out on Purim, and we increase in our simcha throughout the entire month, every day, more and more and more and more. And in fact, after Purim, we get from the Gula of Purim, we get closer to the Gula Shlema. In the many sikhs, it talks about the advantage of the days after Shoshan Purim, the 16th and the 17th of Purim, because the Gemara questions whether those are days we could read the Megillah. So the fact is a question in the Gemara if we could read the Megillah on the 16th and the 17th of Adar, so there is some type of association. In fact, after the 7th, when you're not allowed to read the Megillah on the 16th and the 17th, because it says only 14th and 15th. But after the 16th and 17th, there's no question of adding to the mitzvah, because it's not even a question about reading the Megillah then, so you can do whatever you want then. So that's unique about the 16th and the 17th, and in fact, when Purim falls out, Shushan Purim falls out on a Shabbos, in Yerushalayim, they celebrate Purim on the Sunday, which is the 16th. So as mentioned in the beginning of the year, this year is unique. We start Shabbos before Purim on the 11th of Adar, the first day that we could potentially read the Megillah, and Friday, the last day of the week, is the 17th of Adar, which is still in association with Purim. Maybe we be zeicher for the Gula Shlema, take it from Yad Mamish, Zay Gesund.